introduce her just for our purification. Yes. So Arudha Mataji is a pioneer and mentor in homeschooling. She has authored so many books, as you know, in this area, and two of them being very prominent: Homeschooling Krishna's Children and Srimad-Bhagavatam for Young Readers, which is a series of books which is serving as a guidebook for children reading Srimad-Bhagavatam. So as of now, I think Mataji has come up till third canto, and they are such fantastic books. As you'll all see, that we will use a lot of ideas from her books. All right, and then she's also known worldwide for her seminars on Krishna conscious parenting. So every other day, you will hear that there's a seminar that she's giving in Europe, somewhere else, UK and USA. All the time she's doing this. Of course, all of us should also be aware that the Boise Temple in USA was her and her family's initiative. So they started this center at home, and with their two children, she was homeschooling them. They started a small cafe with prasadam. So, they're a typical exemplary ISKCON family, which is like fired up, and they spread the message of Srila Prabhupada so beautifully, beginning with US, and then coming back to India. It was like that, but then people in India started noticing, and then her family has grown so well. We are very...
Sorry, Mataji, to interrupt you.
Yeah.
One of the Matajis are not able to log in. Can you help her? She has sent a message in the group.
So is it because she has, can you share with her your password and login details? Maybe she has the wrong one, the previous...
Okay, fine. I'll write it. I'll do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Sorry for interrupting. Sorry.
So thank you, Mataji. We welcome you to this training program that we have, we've just thought of for devotees everywhere. We thought something very specific for children, and this course is specifically for teenagers. So Mataji, now over to you. We are really eagerly waiting.
Thank you, Madhumati, for your very generous introduction, as always. And I'm so happy to be here and really, really inspired to hear that under her guidance, all of you are taking the step of teaching your teenagers from Srila Prabhupada's books. So this is a wonderful, wonderful, inspiring venture that all of you are entering into. And I'm just here to assure you and to inspire you to take this wonderful step towards this goal. So let me begin by telling you a little bit of my history and how I became inspired to teach my children from Srila Prabhupada's books. So my journey in education started when my children turned 5. At that time, like any other parent, like all of you, I started thinking about how to educate them. What is the best way to educate them? And like most parents, I opted for a private school, and my children went there for 3 years. But during that time, I became a little dissatisfied with mainly two things. One was the value system, and I'm sure all of you can identify with them. And since we are devotees, we naturally want to pass those Krishna conscious values to our children. This is one of our greatest aspirations. And what I found lacking in that school was this value system. And being in the West, as you know, this can be a very big challenge. And the second issue that also disturbed me was the academic side. What I found that generally schools are meant for the average. If you are above average, then you are not challenged. You become bored. And if you're below average, then you end up being frustrated. In other words, schools are generally catering for the average. because it's not possible for a teacher to teach 20 children and cater to their needs all at once. But mainly, like I said, I was really discouraged by the value system that I was actually witnessing as my children were coming home every day and we were communicating. And another frustration I had was that there was no time to teach them to teach them from Srila Prabhupada's books, to teach them, extracurricular activities like to play the mridanga and harmonium. There was no time. And when there was a little time, it was very difficult to take them away from the devotional, from the outside, the frame of mind that they bring from outside into a devotional frame of mind. So looking at these challenges, I started looking into other alternative ways to educate them. And at that time, I came across this concept of homeschooling, which was getting very popular in America. So I thought I'll take this step, which was frankly speaking, I was very, very nervous. So I thought, well, the safest way would be to homeschool them during summer, during the 3 months of summer. And if they do okay, and I'm able to do it, then they can continue. Otherwise, I'll put them back in school. So it was a safe way to do things. And in America, you can buy these curriculums for the whole year. So I bought one of these curriculums for each of my 2 boys. And to my surprise, what I found that they were even studying like 2 hours a day. They were able to finish the entire year's curriculum in those 3 months. I became encouraged. And so I began my homeschooling in this way. But very soon I became dissatisfied with the fixed curriculum that I bought and wanted to try a curriculum based on Srila Prabhupada's books, especially Srimad-Bhagavatam. So, and what was amazing that within, just by studying Srimad-Bhagavatam with them for 2 hours a day, within a span of 6 years, their language and comprehension skills were amazing. And they had mastered good language skills, and their communication skills, their comprehension skills were at a very high level. So both my husband and I noticed that things were actually working very well. They were equipped both materially and spiritually. So we became very encouraged. And I continued to teach in this way. And so this was basically a program every day. In the morning, we'd get up and do a morning program. And then we would do Srimad-Bhagavatam for 2 to 3 hours every day. And after that, we would go out and actually try to put all of these, philosophy into practice. We would engage in different preaching activities, and within our own home, which was a little preaching center at that time, we celebrated festivals and went on Harinam, book distribution. So there was for even during homeschooling days, my children recollect, there was no dull moment in our life. There was so much fun and Krishna conscious activity going on. And as a lot of us think that schooling means that a child has to sit in front of a desk is kind of sentenced to a desk 6 or 8 hours a day, and this is what education is. But what I found in my experience, that actually real education happens outside the home. So when after studying Srimad-Bhagavatam and a few other subjects, and going out and presenting that philosophy and exposing the children to the outside world in a Krishna conscious perspective, really opened their minds, and they were able to see the world from the perspective of Krishna consciousness. Now we see let us try to understand what was Srila Prabhupada's vision for our children. Prabhupada wanted our children to be all round. He wanted them well versed in Shastras, to be able to share Krishna with others, and also to be very very serious in their own sadhana. And Prabhupada, he wanted our children to be actually exemplary Vaishnava preachers. He said, if we train our children in this way, that will be the glory of our movement and the glory of your country as well. But if we miss out even one Vaishnava, that will be a great loss. He said, our children are not ordinary children. Why? Because they've taken birth in devotee families. And they're just here to finish up their life, their remaining material life and go back to Godhead. So as parents, we should help them to accomplish that goal so that there's no more birth in the next life. Now, Prabhupada, he wanted our children to study English and Sanskrit. Why? Because he so that they could read his books. Because he said that by reading Srimad-Bhagavatam, it would equip the child to know every subject matter in the world. Prabhupada, there's a beautiful quote by Srila Prabhupada that I'd like to read to you. Sorry. Yes. Our students specifically, they should take care of reading Srimad-Bhagavatam. We have therefore prescribed in our school Dallas. And from the very beginning, if they begin education with Bhagavad Gita and then come to Srimad-Bhagavatam and read the whole literature, then they will be more than MA, PhD. Even astronomy, astrology, politics, sociology, atomic theory, everything is there. Therefore, if you study Srimad-Bhagavatam very carefully, then you will get all knowledge completely. Throughout the whole world, whatever knowledge is there is in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. If one simply reads Srimad-Bhagavatam, his education is the topmost. If one studies Srimad-Bhagavatam, he is well versed in every subject matter. So Prabhupada said, by giving them this education, the children will be confident of our spiritual identity and also do well academically. Prabhupada's books inspire us to use logic and critical thinking, which are the main elements of any academic education. Even a basic understanding of Srimad-Bhagavatam philosophy far exceeds the level of thinking found in most college courses. And there is no harm in teaching our children directly from Srimad-Bhagavatam, because all the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita is contained in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And one of the things that is very, very crucial is that Prabhupada wanted our children not only to develop scholastic achievements, but he also wanted them to develop good character. Qualities such as tolerance, self-control, mercy, compassion, they are very, very important in developing a person's Krishna consciousness. And we see in the world today that there is full with people who are, he called them debauchees, rogues, and thieves. And he said that these people, they come from a background where they've had good education. And some of them even have plenty of money. So education in itself is not the key to developing good character. But Vedic education is very different. He said Vedic education teaches these wonderful qualities. He pointed out that even 50 years ago in India, influential people sent their children to Gurukula. Why? Because they knew that teaching them these qualities are so very important. Prabhupada said it doesn't matter what varna or what ashram the children adopt. The main thing is that they should develop good character. And so Prabhupada, that is why in all the Gurukulas, when Prabhupada emphasized Gurukula during his time, he encouraged the study of his books in fact, there were three things that Prabhupada was very, very, very close to his heart. One was book distribution, as we all know, deity worship, and Gurukula. Now, he said Gurukula is just for the first 10 years of a child's life, right? But during those years, it's important that he develops these good qualities. Of course, now it's, it's not possible for every one of us to send our children to Gurukula. They are very few, and some of them, at least for me, it was too far away, right? So what is the way? Is to turn our own homes into like an ashram with a few adjustments, and for the parents to become like the teachers, and the home becomes an ashram. In other words, Prabhupada said that children do whatever the elders are doing. You know, if the elders get up in the morning and do a nice morning program, the children will do the same. And when the man goes out to work, then the children can be educated in this, you know, in all these scriptures and books. So sometimes people think that really, is it practical to do this way? Will our children become simply preachers or pujaris? Well, actually, in my case, this was not true. Uh, and I know in the cases of many, many now, thousands of devotees who are introducing Srimad-Bhagavatam in their children's lives, they've noticed how it is beneficial in every area in their life, not only in their moral life, but also in their life as a while holding a job outside in the academic world as students. It has beneficial results in every area, because Bhagavatam not only teaches about Krishna and his devotees, but also the nature of this material world and how to live in this material world while while adopting the principles of outlined in Srimad Bhagavatam. In other words, we live in this world with a spiritual context. As you know, Srimad Prabhupada said, that Srimad Bhagavatam explains every psychological situation in the world. So, like I mentioned earlier, what was amazing that just by doing 6 years of this study, my children were able to go to college very early in their life at the age of 12, and be able to study subjects like anthropology, sociology, science, and geography, history, without any problem. And what was amazing was not only that their language skills were good, but also their understanding of finer points was excellent. Why? Because the study of Srimad Bhagavatam gives that understanding. It sharpens the intellect and develops good reasoning and critical thinking skills. In fact, today employers are looking for people with these skills, right? Gone are the days when one would just look at the degrees or how much merit one has. Now people are looking for people who can take a problem, organize it, synthesize it, and to be able to give their own solutions on those problems. And clearly, Srimad Bhagavatam gives those skills. Now we have to remember that the subject matter in Srimad Bhagavatam is not dogmatic. In other words, Krishna, it doesn't say that I'm telling you, you do this, 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 and now don't argue. No, it's a conversation. A lot of it is conversation. Like in Gita, we can see in the Bhagavad Gita, it's a conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. And Arjuna doesn't understand. Many times he does not understand what Krishna is saying. And he keeps asking and arguing and asking Krishna to explain himself and remove his confusion. Right? So if it's satisfying for Arjuna, surely it is satisfying for us. So, and of course, I mentioned how vocabulary Prabhupada is mentioning in this quote is masters and PhD. It's masters and PhD. And children who are raised on this kind of study, they're able to comprehend just about any subject matter after that. My children were studying things like Shakespeare, chemistry, physics, but because their understanding, their critical thinking abilities and their understanding was so deep, they were able to actually understand any subject matter. And now today, many, many children throughout ISKCON are trying this process, and they're having wonderful results. So, so in this way, we can introduce. Now, for a lot of us, it's not possible to homeschool. So my purpose here is not to encourage all of you to homeschool, but my purpose here is to help you understand the importance of reading Srimad-Bhagavatam, both from a spiritual and also from an academic perspective. So if you can introduce the study of Srimad-Bhagavatam, even like, if you can do it every day after they come from school, or then that's really nice. Even if you're able to devote like half hour every day. Well, if you cannot do that and it's quite a challenge, then you could introduce it 2 or 3 times a week. And if that's not possible, once a week. So the point is that even a little bit of Srimad Bhagavatam study will go a long way. It will make the family come closer. There will be good communication between the members of the family, because Bhagavatam evokes that closeness, because the content is spiritual and the subject matter is Krishna, then and his devotees. Therefore, children are able to reveal their heart in a way that is very, very difficult otherwise. We see how when children are getting to be teenagers, it becomes more and more of a challenge, isn't it? We see that how the generation gap between the adults and children start to widen as they become teenagers. And it's because they in schools, when they go, they are building their own identity, especially in America. We see that how children around at that age, they develop their own identity. In fact, they consider themselves as their own species. They have their own music, they have their own dress, they have their own language, right? And the children do, because they are so aloof from the adults and they don't relate with them, they're not able to develop the sense of responsibility of learning through the wisdom of the adults, and the generation gap becomes bigger and bigger. But in Krishna conscious lifestyle, you see this generation gap is very, very minimal. Why? Because we have the same kind of music, we have the same kind of food, we have the same kind of focus. So in this way, by reading Srimad Bhagavatam and feeding the intelligence, we are able to narrow that gap, because of that open communication and the same interests that we have. So the study of, and it's important to also feed the intelligence, because right about the age when children, teenagers, they're hitting their 12th year like that, then a lot of confusion arises in them, because they're trying, at this age, they're trying to make sense of the world. And especially if they're devotees, they are trying to make sense of their 2 different types of lives. And it's very hard for them sometimes to try to connect the 2. And they are being pulled by peer pressure as well. So what happens is the children at this age start losing their faith and their identity as devotees. And they stop communicating with their parents. So how to build that gap again? Of course, there are many practical ways. We try to make sure that they have devotee friends that they can hang around with and develop similar interests, do things together with them. But then I've noticed in my own experience how most of the time this is not enough. What they need is ways where they can actually get answers to their questions, where their intelligence can be fed. And this happens when they read Prabhupada's books, the Shastras. What Shastra does is it strengthens their faith. Whatever they see practically their parents doing and other devotees doing is solidified when they study the philosophy. And Srimad-Bhagavatam is so wonderful that through the examples of true stories of great devotees and of Krishna and his pastimes, they are able to connect. They are able to understand the philosophy easily. And they're able to relate with it. So the process of studying Srimad-Bhagavatam is very, very simple. So what I did and what many, many parents, thousands of parents are doing now is the form of discussion. We sit together and we take turns reading translations, and we stop from time to time and open it up for discussions. Now the teacher can read the chapter ahead of time and make some certain points of the points of discussion she or he would like to bring up. And in this way, the teacher or the parent goes through the purports and makes certain notes, what he or she would like to bring up. And the children, they just read translations, And our teenagers, they're older, and if once in a while you could read some purport, especially I would read purports when I did not have an answer to one of their questions. It's okay if the teacher cannot answer everything, or the parent cannot answer everything. It's all right. One can, together with the children, one can find the answers through the purports. So this discussion is a very important process in sharpening the mind and the intelligence, because it becomes interactive. The children are able to ask questions, the teacher is able to answer, and what ensues from there is a lively opening of the minds. And very soon you will find yourself discussing so many issues. There will be issues where you'll bring in history, geography, problems, within the family, issues within the family, and within the devotee community, or at the board, or what's happening in the world today. As we are presently in this phase of virus lockdown, it becomes very confusing for the children. And so many of these questions are answered in Srimad-Bhagavatam. For example, the 7th canto, the Prahlad story, is such an inspiring story. Prabhupada read this section like for months in Vrindavan, because he found the story of Prahlad very, very relevant in today's society. And we see that, right? The contrast that through which we can teach our children. Hiranyakashipu as the biggest terrorist in history has ever known, right? And Prahlad as the greatest devotee of the Lord, and how Prahlad was able to live in this with his father, even with all the atrocities, and was so the child learns that how even in this society where it's natural normal for all types of people to be here. There was a self-serving, demoniac people, but also, the devotees are always there, and how they can actually live in this world, right? And we see through the activities of Hiranyakashipu, we see that how the society, how his citizens were suffering, and how his mood of envy towards Krishna led towards envy of other living entities. His treatment of cows, his slaughter of cows, of devotees, of brahmanas, and even of trees, all this is very, very reminiscent of today's society, right? A society that is born out of, whose wealth and affluence is born out of exploitation of animals and humans. It cannot be lasting, cannot be very strong and lasting. So in this way, children understand that what is natural wealth is wealth that is in which one lives harmoniously with nature and with the Lord. So there's so many things we just in that one story, we are teaching them the different natures in human life. We're teaching them, a Brahminical centered society versus a society in which there's so much of exploitation, right? We're teaching them nature, we're teaching them ecology. So every different aspect of things are being discussed here. It's so easy to understand the nature of this material world through the context of Srimad-Bhagavatam, because we have these stories through which children can understand what's happening in the world. It's so much a better way to understand the nature of this world and how to live in it in a way that is helpful to us, and in a way that we can become compassionate to others. If we were to allow our children to go and experience these things, this will lead to disastrous results. But learning about the nature of material world through Srimad-Bhagavatam gives a very, very positive perspective. And when teaching the children the nature of this material world, but how to live in it while preparing oneself to go back to Godhead, and also live in a way where we can become compassionate to others, where we can help others. It's not like we are leading an isolated life. No, children are actually, through Srimad-Bhagavatam and through practical devotional service of outreach, preaching, children are actually more in the world than devotee children are more in the world than those who are not devotees. So I think I'll stop here, and thank you very much for allowing me to present some of my thoughts on the importance of teaching Srimad-Bhagavatam to our children. And at this point, I want to open it up for questions in case any parents, they have a question with anything regarding education of their children, and in particular about the necessity of teaching Srimad-Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandas Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, I wanted to know that we have heard from some devotees that if we homeschool our children, then they lack that communication which they can develop along with the other children. So if the kids learn along with other kids, they have a better understanding and they learn quite quicker. I've heard this from other devotees. I want to know your opinion about this.
Yes, very good question, a very common question among parents who are considering homeschooling. But yes, so it's a very valid question. So, just only 50 years ago, in America and in India, the method of teaching children was not these big classrooms where children, 30, 40 children are put together in one room, all of the same age. And there's one teacher who teaches while the children listen. Actually, the method of schooling, education was quite different. There used to be small classrooms with about a few children with one teacher, and the children would be of different age groups. So in other words, children had a better, they were learning from all types of children and teachers who were of different age group. And also the method was more interactive. So, so that process today is being followed in Cambridge and big universities like Cambridge and Oxford. It's called the tutorial system, where there's more interaction between the teacher and the students, and because the process is more effective, because it's more centered on the child, and also the child is exposed in different ways to other children of different age groups. So in terms of their social needs, it's not difficult to find, their social, to fulfill their social needs through homeschooling, because children, they can find, over the weekend, they can interact with other children, and they can have friends. So Prabhupada emphasized that more than pure education association, it is important that the children get good adult association, because they learn from adults, right? They learn from adults. So adult education, learning from adults should be given priority. I've heard the story how Indira Gandhi, as you know, she was the former Prime Minister of India. She was not even high school, I believe. And how did she become such a great Prime Minister? It's a mundane example, but very interesting, because she became such a big statesman just by hanging over her father's chair and hearing while her father, Nehru, would discuss with the other statesmen and other diplomats. This is how she understood politics, not through going to school, but through association with other adults. So this is what in today's world is lacking. Generally we put our children with their children. So Prabhupada would say all they do is they learn from their own age groups. So basically he said the children are at this point, they're foolish, and so they learn from other fools. Unless we give them good other association, which is more experienced and wiser, the children are able to only pick up so much, and it's not difficult to find good association in a homeschooling environment. We have the association they have of their friends in the temple, and also other adults, elders in Krishna consciousness, as well as the sannyasis and gurus who come by and visit, as well as your own association. Okay. Any other question?
The people who have raised hands, Shamvallabhi Mataji, please ask your question.
It's unmute, Mata. Yeah. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Mataji, thank you very much for sharing all your experience. That was really nice to hear about all those things. My question is, Mataji, what is the best age to start the studies of Srimad-Bhagavatam with the children?
Good question, Mataji. Yes, you can start. Well, in England, they've made a group called the Baby Bhagavatam Group, and they've introduced Bhagavatam as early as 3 years old, all the way till 6 years old, and they meet once a week, and they are studying starting from Canto 1, Chapter 1. But the way they teach is in a very fun way, in a very creative way, and through action and through dramas. In this way, they're able to give this knowledge even to such young children. So now early on, when they're very little to be able to read, then we can show them pictures in Srimad-Bhagavatam, there's beautiful pictures in Srila Prabhupada's books, explain to them, point out different, items there. For example, Krishna, his peacock feather, the cows, the peacocks, and the children love that. You see, whatever we study in these books, they're all transcendental, they're very potent. So when we point out these things to our children, they actually are associating with Krishna. So we shouldn't think that, these things are not important, and we end up, letting them spend time in mundane things, like being in front of a television, or, putting the phone in front of them, a show or something. All this is not necessary. One should try to engage them in ways that are very, very beneficial for them. And as they get older, then, for example, between 4 and 6, we can read to them from Srila Prabhupada's translations directly to them, and then explain them and make them very, very interesting and exciting. Well, even a 4-year or 5-year-old child can sit through like a 45-minute Bhagavatam class just through the process of hearing and interacting. Like, they love to be challenged. They actually, even that young children, they love to. It's nice to ask them questions, and they like to speak. They like to answer. So it kind of opens up their mind. And as the children get older and they can read, then we begin some serious discussion. So initially, the discussion is, it's not very challenging, but it's amazing as the child's appetite for an attraction for Srimad Bhagavatam grows, she or he is able to go deeper and go into the finer points very early in their life. Very early in their life. And you will see how even topics such as, abstract things like that we are not the body, but we are spirit, soul, concepts, for example, very, very even difficult concepts become very easy for our children, right? For teenagers especially, topics such as, there's so many things that parents may find very negative in Srimad Bhagavatam, but it's topics such as death and, hells and things, they actually become a great topic for intense discussion. And the children actually leave very, very happy and excited. because the way Srimad-Bhagavatam puts it is very, very, it evokes curiosity and is presented in a way where it always gives the positive side. In other words, the concept of death is very fearful to a non-devotee, but for a devotee, it's not fearful. And we have examples, right? We have examples of that. The story of Dhruv Maharaj leaving his body and the airplane coming down and taking him. Such a beautiful story, right? Time and again, we hear the passing away of devotees and how within a flash, Krishna is there with them, right? So in other words, difficult concepts such as, death can be presented in a way that becomes very exciting. I remember in the story of Hiranyakashipu, the second chapter, the Hiranyakashipu, the king of the demons, the section where Hiranyakashipu is preaching to his relatives because they are all grieving for the loss of Hiranyaksha, his brother. And in that story, Hiranyakashipu tells the story of the queens, the queens who were lamenting for the death of their husband, the king. And it was described how because they would not let the body to be cremated, then the soul of the king was hovering there and could not leave the dead body and just hung around there, not able to go to the next body. And so Prabhupada talks about how the soul suffers at the time, of death, and when there's no spiritual enlightenment, if the soul has not developed Krishna consciousness, there's a lot of suffering, and how cremation helps the body, helps the soul detach itself from the body. So all these things I remember discussing with this teenage group, and it became so interesting for them. It opened up their minds about the nature of this life, the nature of this body, and why things happen the way they happen, why things that it becomes so horrific that we don't want to discuss with our children actually becomes a topic which is very educative and very interesting, and also gives them a conviction that this is the way I want to go. This is the way I want to live my life, right? So instead of being depressive, it actually becomes very, very enlightening and inspiring for the children. There's always a side in the children who likes all these. Sometimes, we get worried about the violence depicted in Srimad-Bhagavatam, right? How Krishna is killing, when he kills Hiranyakashipu, he's tearing out the intestines from his abdomen, and he's wearing it like a garland around it. It feels so horrific. But these very stories, the children love. Why? Because there's a side in all of us that loves fighting and war. And, that's why children go after horror movies, right? So because there's a side in all of us which likes battle, which likes these things, right? So this is to satisfy these inclinations through Srimad-Bhagavatam is very, very nice, because nothing in the Srimad-Bhagavatam will be detrimental for us, because it's transcendental, and there's a reason why it's being done. Violence is there, but it's the purpose of rooting out violence, not for the purpose of satisfying one's false ego, like we see in today's world, right? So in this way, the child grows up understanding the nature of this world, why there's violence, why there's, there's so much, envy in this world. Okay.
Thank you, Mataji.
Janardhan Prabhuji can ask question. He has raised hand. Okay. We can't hear you.
This is actually Radharani Devidasi. Thank you for your enlightening lecture. I have been hearing the lectures of yours earlier through. Hare Krishna.
I cannot hear.
Mataji now?
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
You're not very audible, Mataji. So maybe you should write it here on the chat because a lot of parents have written in the chat also. So we will surely ask them, all of them. But in the meanwhile, can Sarveshwar Nandakumar Prabhuji ask his question? Unless
Hare Krishna
yes.
Mataji, Dhanavad Pranam. My question is like how to give Krishna consciousness to the children from the very beginning, say from 1 year of age. So at different age level, how we should expose them to Krishna consciousness?
I just outlined that, how you can begin in the early ages and move on all the way to when they are teenagers. Because in the early age, in the early times, the best thing, children generally learn by imitation. So when they see their parents engaged in Krishna consciousness, they tend to imitate. And then introducing Srila Prabhupada's books at that age can be through the form of pictures, showing them pictures, pointing out different things. And then as they get older, introducing, reading with them, Srimad-Bhagavatam or any Krishna book like that, and explaining to them as to what is happening in the story and building a real image, in front of them and making it very exciting. And then, of course, comes a little bit more serious type of study but also a lot of fun, where we open it up for discussions and go deeper and deeper into the subject matter. In other words, the questions turn from what happened to why it happened, and the reason behind it, right? In that way, it changes. And so, so in this way, we can keep progressing more and more and more.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mataji.
Gopal Leela Das Prabhuji can ask his question. Is Gopal Leela Prabhuji here?
Audible?
Yes. Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Mataji, for your sharing your experience, Mataji. I just wanted to check with you in terms of what is how this Srimad Bhagavatam has to be introduced, whether it should be verse by verse, or whether you take a particular section like Prahlad Maharaj section or Dhruv Maharaj section. Because and this is the first question, and how to inspire, like they they would not feel studying Srimad Bhagavatam. They are more interested in only a story format rather than going into philosophy. Like first, second canto, there is more of philosophical discussion. So they would not like philosophy, but they would definitely like the story format. So just wanted to check with on these 2 points. Thank you.
Yes, good question, bro. It's always easier to begin with stories. For example, the Dhruva story is a great story to begin, and because then, and once the attraction to Srimad Bhagavatam is solidified, then one can go to the first canto, first chapter, and just to create that initial interest. Now, if you want to start from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, then you can take the help of these guidebooks that we've been, publishing. A whole team of us are trying to publish every canto. And we've now we're working on the 4th canto. Or you can start with a story, and you see there's plenty of story philosophy in any story. Lord Chaitanya read the story of Dhruva and Prahlad hundreds of times. Why? Because of the lessons. Every time you read, there's newer and newer meanings. And there's so much philosophy there. So we just don't give them the storyline, but we actually go deep into the philosophy. We open it up, just like what you're trying to do, as for your children in terms of setting up these Bhagavatam classes. The idea is to teach them these values, through Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So these same values is being brought through these stories, right? For example, in Dhruva's story, we see the quality of gratefulness. If you were to teach your child how to be grateful to other devotees, to their parents for what they've done, it's very difficult. No child is going to hear that you need to, I remember going to convent during my early days in India for school, and there was a class called moral science class, and it used to be the first class, and and we were learning. It was a Christian school, so they were teaching us the 10 Commandments and all that. And it was one of those classes that we never took seriously. Whatever we learned, it just came out the other ear, like whoosh, So, but through Srimad-Bhagavatam, these good qualities, these good things, they really go deep in the heart, right? The quality of gratefulness, what we hear from Dhruv Maharaj, goes very, very deep. His quality of gratefulness to his mother, even after 36,000 years, when the airplane came to take him back to Godhead, he did not forget his mother, and he did not want. He refused to go on the plane, and then of course we know the story of Nanda and Sunanda pointed out upwards in the sky how his mother was already leaving in another airplane. So that quality goes very, very deep, that understanding through Bhagavatam, a child never forgets, right? So teaching them through these stories become very, very powerful versus trying to teach them separately. So I don't know if I've answered your question, Prabhu, but maybe I went on a different tangent, Please let me know if you need more clarity on your question.
Can't hear from.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, please go ahead.
Mataji, the book which you have written, Canto 1, Volume 1, I just took it from my sister. So I am working in a school. So I just had a plan that we should have a values plus class wherein can teach Srimad-Bhagavatam to the students with the help of your book, which has some lot of activities and story. So at what level this book is, like from which age we can teach, with the one which you have written?
Mm-hmm. So it's from like 6 years old, you can say, to 15 years old, or even there. I know a lot of adults are using this book because it helps them to, it simplifies the philosophy of the Bhagavatam. But so it can be taken up by any age group. Now in Mayapur International School and also in Vrindavan Gurukula, the Bhaktivedanta Gurukula, where Madhumati was working for many years. As you know, she's very, very expert. She started this program there, and she introduced the study of Bhagavatam in all the primary and middle school, for primary and middle school children. So it can be, it can be done at different age groups. In Mayapur, they had introduced it to middle school children all the way till 9th grade, I think, and now they're introducing it to primary school using the same guidebooks. Okay. So in other words, one can easily adapt it to whatever level, because there's so many activities there, and you don't have to do all of them, and you can pick out the ones that you want. And also the teacher can actually simplify or adapt it according to the child's needs. And I think if you talk to Madhumati, she has got some excellent ideas that she was doing in the school over there in Vrindavan, where she was, teaching this value-based education through the Bhagavatam.
All right. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, Mataji.
Okay. Naina Mataji, would you like to ask your question? Naina Mataji, are you
yes,
around?
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Mataji, I posted my question in chat also, and it is same, like my son is 6 years old, and he has little learning disability, was not able to pick up language at the age of 3 and 4. So with one-to-one therapy, he has shown very great result. He is doing very well now. And I'm really convinced with the homeschooling concept, the importance you explain now. So do you recommend homeschooling for him? I want to know, because there's some little special need, not like that, but he's doing very well, a little behind as per his age, but he's doing good. Mm-hmm. So do you recommend homeschooling?
Well, I'm a little biased towards that anyway. So definitely, yes, I do recommend, because the main thing that is really helps with homeschooling is just such a nurturing environment, especially with a child who's got some special needs. It really works well in that environment. Of course, it works well for any child, right? Even any child. But because the environment is very, very nurturing, and because the environment is nurturing and focused, then it helps him to to actually overcome those hurdles, those challenges that he may be facing. There's more motivation. There's fewer disciplinary problems in the child, because there's less exposure to the negative influences that we find in schools today, right? So naturally, there's less to fight with, and and uh, and so you may try that. You may try that. Like I said, in any case, whether you're sending your child to school or keeping him at home, I would definitely recommend the study of Shastra, the study of Srimad-Bhagavatam in your child's life, as, either way. But definitely, yes, if you can do it, go for it.
Yeah, and I'm a beginner now in Krishna consciousness journey, and I'm also a little bit reading. So how to go about it for homeschooling, like some guidance will be there for me. That way I want to know more.
Well, don't worry about that for now, because see how little your child is. Anybody can teach such a young child, right? A 6-year-old child, or even an 8, 9, 10-year-old child. The subject matter, we've already done everything, and so to teach him at that level is not difficult. And when children have developed good study habits, then they practically teach themselves in the higher grades. It's a fact. I experienced that, and so many parents are experiencing that. That once you develop those, those skills, those independent study skills in the children, and that becomes natural in a case of homeschooling, then the children become very equipped to study on their own with some help. You see. So we don't need to be very highly educated in order to teach our children. What we need is a great sincerity to, to be convinced why we are doing it, right? Homeschooling only happens when a person is convinced on the reasons why, and why they want to homeschool, and then the hurdles they become easy to overcome. For me, my biggest drive was that I wanted to teach them the values, Krishna conscious values, and introduce them to Srila Prabhupada's books. And so when that became a driving incentive, then the hurdles were there, but they were not very difficult to overcome.
Okay, Nayana Mataji, I'm trying to unmute you, but somehow it's not letting me unmute. Maybe, yeah.
She already asked Mataji.
Okay, no, she has sent. Okay, fine. Aishwarya Mataji in that case.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Danvat Pranam. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. I have met you personally. I have had the good fortune of meeting you in Detroit also, but it's always nice to hear from you again and again. Mataji, my question is like, now my daughter is a teenager, and reading Bhagavatam with her all through, sometimes it becomes a little difficult or awkward, I would say, for me, especially where the part, sense gratification between men and women, those type of topics come. So I don't know how to deal with that situation. I feel like, avoiding that or just touching it and going. So how do we handle that? Is it okay to go in depth discussing all that? Yeah, at one point we have to, and they have to understand all this. But my son is also most of the time around, and I find it awkward. So I just need your advice, Mataji, how to deal with those topics of Bhagavatam.
Yes, Mataji, very good question, and it's a very common question among parents who have taken up the step of teaching seriously the Bhagavatam to their children. And we find so many topics like that in Bhagavatam. But what we have to understand is that these topics, the children are going to pick it up anyway. And if they don't pick it up from Srimad-Bhagavatam, we can guarantee that they will pick it up from the outside sources, which is generally through the medium of electronic medium or through peers in school. These topics, they will learn about these topics. the topics of how to relate with the opposite sex, right? So, but it is very nice to introduce such topics through the Srimad-Bhagavatam in a way that is with certain boundaries, right? So now in Srimad-Bhagavatam is transcendental. So whatever is mentioned there is not going to be harmful for our children, because Bhagavatam gives both perspectives. It gives the perspective of sense, it gives us the perspective of sex, which is done out of sense gratification, and also indulging in sex, which is according to religious principles. So it gives both, right? We see in the story of how Daksha and Kashyapa Muni, they have hundreds of children for the purpose of raising a God conscious family, right? And then on the other extreme, we see stories like Puranjan, right? And the story of Diti and the birth of Hiranyakashipu. Now, as they read the story of Puranjan, we hear about quite graphically the lusty relationships between man and Puranjan and his wife, right? But as we read along, then we also hear the result of such relationship, right? Very soon, Puranjan and his wife, they are attacked by this old age, and they undergo a lot of suffering. So the child, with the guidance of the teacher or parent, is able to understand the results of such association. When association between man and woman is not according to religious principles, through the medium of marriage, then all types of disastrous results follow, right? We get the concept of good grahastha life that they see at home, right? They see you interacting with your husband. So the relationship is very much present in their own life, right? So it's not difficult for them to relate with these topics, right? So they can understand that what is the meaning of a good grahastha versus the pitfalls of Grahmedi life. So this whole material world is all about attraction between man and woman, right? But the child through the Srimad-Bhagavatam learns how to take that same attachment and put it in a way and use it in a way that's pleasing to Krishna. That's the key that we have to teach them. Not that we ban these topics to them, because it's everywhere and it's important to teach them. Just about every story is about grahasthas. But there are so many ideal examples of grahasthas in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? The story of Karda Muni and Devhuti, the story of Prithu Maharaj and his wife Archie. Time and again, we have these stories, right? The story of Pandavas and their household life. So anything, we have to have the faith that anything in the Bhagavatam cannot be detrimental to a child's life. I personally did the entire 12 cantos with my children. And answering that question that earlier one Mataji said, of not being qualified, right? I also felt very unqualified because I was a fairly new devotee. So I was learning with them. As my children were learning and making advancement, I was also. But the difference is that the mother or father is always going to be the teacher, because due to their experiences in life, right? Due to their maturity. So we are always capable to teach them. So when we're teaching these topics, and if the child happens to ask very deep questions in terms of sex and things, then we can always set boundaries. In my experience with my own children and hearing from others, the children generally, they understand, and they generally don't get deeply into it because they're just not at that level. So we can move on. We don't have to dwell there. If there are topics, if there are areas in the Bhagavatam which is especially very difficult, we can move on. In other words, we can read through the translations and not open it up for discussion. In other words, we don't read, at least my personal experience was that to keep moving through translations. In other words, you may want to do one verse a day, that you could try that and open it up for discussions. But generally, it always helps when you keep moving. So in this way, if there are areas which is a little tough, then we just read through it and move on to the next section where there's more discussion. It's not like we have to discuss everything in the Bhagavatam or every verse in the Bhagavatam. Because as you know, we should understand that Bhagavatam can be taught in layers. So we don't have to give every layer, the deepest layer, all at once, right? We can introduce them as they get more and more mature. So, okay, I hope that answers your question. If not, then you can ask me another one.
Okay. The Samyukta Mataji. Yes, Samyukta Mataji, would you like to ask your question?
Yes,
I request the devotees to be a little so you're able to take up all the questions. Yes, Mataji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji, for the wonderful sessions. Mataji, I've been following you from many years, Mataji. Like I'm doing homeschooling for both of my kids. But Mataji, the problem is I am not able to manage my other household chores or cooking, Mataji. So I wanted to know how did you manage the cooking and the household chores and along with the homeschooling, Mataji? Isn't it difficult, Mataji? All around one person running around all the things. So please help me, Mataji, how to manage the household chores, cooking and all, Mataji, especially because morning program, then again Bhagavatam. So the cooking should be done before all these things, or how do you manage, Mataji?
Yes, I totally understand that question. I myself went through so many struggles, and I get this question all the time, that how to manage one's life in a situation where one's homeschooling. Uh, I would say just Krishna, through experience, one develops a type of life where it becomes efficient. In other words, you will, by Krishna's mercy, you will learn the things that help you to move through the process of housework throughout the day in a way that may have taken you twice as much time as what you're going to do now, because the motivation is there, right? So one can adopt a way by which it makes it more and more practical, right? So it's not an easy thing, but my perspective is that material life in general is generally a struggle. I remember when my children are, were going to school for 3 years of their life, I was also very busy, and mainly I was in so much anxiety because I was running back and forth, taking them prashadam, and they would have, birthdays where there would be a cake with eggs. So I made sure that they had their own cookies and things that they could eat as well as share. So I was making so many trips back and forth. Plus, there was so many extracurricular activities that I had to participate. Then I had to sit down with their homework, and on and on and on. So, and then when I started homeschooling, then I found that even with all those struggles that generally comes in the area what you're mentioning, I was a lot more relaxed because I knew that, well, I don't have to make a perfect atmosphere at home. Children learn through the struggles as well, and they learn to adapt accordingly. Like some days, if you're really tired, you can take a nap while children keep themselves busy with things. They know that mother is tired and she needs rest, and because they're trained well, they will keep themselves busy, right? It's not like everything has to be perfect. So you develop a system, in your life, and you try different things. It's not like we try something and that's the bottom line. No, you try something and it doesn't work, try something else. Just like in a relationship, we don't put it on autopilot. Okay, this is the way how it's going to be, and now I don't have to do anything more, right? No, it always needs constant working, right? Constant working, and that makes a good relationship. Same thing in our struggles in Krishna consciousness. We know this is very good, it pleases Krishna. Now we make adjustments, we try different things. This doesn't work, let's try cooking in this way, making it simpler, maybe doing some prep work at night, or even engaging the children to help you, engaging the children to help you, and I'm sure the husband, he can also help, and pitch in a little bit. But so in other words, try to see in the best way possible. I remember what I did was, when I started homeschooling, I redesigned my kitchen, for example, and so that it would take a few minutes to clean up rather than an hour. So I put, tables that were stainless steel and that I could wipe down really fast. I kind of, it took a little time, but I redesigned it. So in other words, try different, get some certain ideas where you can minimize your housework so you can spend more time in other things as well. Okay.
Thank you, Mataji.
Mm-hmm.
Manjulali Mataji, would you like to ask a question?
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandat Pranam. Thank you for your, enlightening words. And it was 3 years back that I came across this wonderful book written by you, Homeschooling Krishna's Children. And now my children are in 10th and 7th grade. So now until sometime, they would, wake up with me for Mangalarti and all. But now since the elder one wants to study in the night and she's awake like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. and she's, her habits are changing. So I spoke to her. So she's like, no, this is the way I can study. So should I let her be or, just of course I'm convincing, but that doesn't help us. So what should we do? That is first question. And the second is I'm a working mother. So we cannot kind of not control, but we don't know what's happening behind us. So it's only the night that we come together and sometimes, discuss a little about Krishna. So how does one manage as a working mother?
Yes, Mataji. I think your first question was about her up very late in the night. Yeah, definitely that's not such a good thing for a child to be up so late. It is not good habits to be up late and to get up so late in the morning. It's always nicer to go to bed in time and wake up early. That's more sattvic, Prabhupada said, right? The Brahma Muhurta time is very nice. Even if she cannot get up that early, at least getting up at a decent time is very good for her spiritual life as well as her health, her physical life. That's one thing. And the other point was that in terms of your working, right? So I don't know how she's being taken care of during the time you're away. She probably is going to school, except for now when it's a lockdown there everywhere. So that's something you have to see and see. I mean, it's what when you come in the evening, then definitely sit down with her and read Srimad-Bhagavatam with her. That would really, really help. Because as you're reading with her, I forget how old you said she was, but as you're reading with her, she will open up. She will be able to open up her heart and through those stories. Because during the time we are reading with our children, we don't put them on the defensive. We don't point fingers at them or we don't criticize them, but rather we teach them through the perspective of stories so that they are learning, but they also don't feel like they are being judged. Okay. So in this way, they are able to open up their hearts and reveal their struggles. And so I would definitely encourage a little time for that every day, if you can, at least a few days a week, or even once a week or twice a week. So to do this with her, this way you have that connection with her and you don't lose it, because that's easy, especially if you're not there during the day and everything, and you're just meeting her in the evening. Try to spend some quality time with her. So otherwise, you may just end up disconnecting with her and losing her. Okay, I hope that helps.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
Next is Deepmala Golani Mataji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
My question is, sometimes what happens in married couples, like one is Krishna, husband or wife, anyone is Krishna conscious and the other one is not. So at that time, kids are getting two different opinions from both the parents. No, like mother or father, they are telling to read Bhagavad and get up early and like moral values, and the other one he's saying that like, or she's saying that if they do so, then they won't be like they won't be able to cope up with the modern world and this and that. So how can we deal in that situation? Because it's like the child is so much confused with these two beliefs. No, one is teaching the moral values and the other one is like stick to the modern world. Please help me in that, because I have same problem in my home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So it's amazing that how children have the capability of, negotiating these differences in the home. We should give them more credit for that, because even though you have that problem, a child will be able to adapt himself or herself in that situation. We have to remember that Krishna has given us this particular type of situation for a reason, because the ultimate goal for every one of us is to go back to him. That's what he wants, right? So he's giving us the appropriate environment in which we can progress, So we should never see it as something that you're being punished with or anything like that, and dreaming hopelessly about a situation which could have been different. You should take this in your stride and see how you can make the best use of a bad bargain, right? So in other words, how you can stay in a way which can be still conducive to your child's spiritual upbringing. And you do whatever is possible to raise a child in Krishna consciousness. But having planted those seeds within your child, you should never give up. Even if the child is going through some struggles in Krishna, consciousness, due to the father being weak in this area, there will be a time when those things will be re-emphasized in his life, having gotten those early seeds in his or her life. Okay, so I know one family in Boise, an American family who had 5 children, and the father was not a devotee at all. He wasn't even a vegetarian, but she had a rule in the house that he could eat meat, but outside. At home, she didn't want to cook. She didn't cook meat, and everything was prasadam and everything. And so she started, and he would go to work, and she started teaching him, Krishna consciousness things. She started homeschooling actually with them. So she had plenty of time with them, and she gave them Krishna consciousness. She had very little 4-inch Gaur-Nitai deities, and they would worship during the day. She would teach Srimad-Bhagavatam and did everything which was necessary. And so this was a whole, like a whole army against one person, right? But the mood was not confrontational at all. I don't want to give that picture at all, because we can work under such an environment of being confrontational. We have to keep things very peaceful, very, within the home, and try to, accommodate the other person's, opinions, right? In a way, Krishna gives us the power to become expert in that situation. And you give what you can, and to your best of your ability, you give, okay? And anyway, the ending of that story is that family is that today her children are all wonderful devotees, and so the result is wonderful. It can also become wonderful. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mataji. I think okay, Vishnu Priya Mataji will ask her last question, and we will end with that. But I would like to, mention that please don't be disappointed, those of you who have more questions. So we are starting a series of, sessions like this, like today, where we are hoping to give some practical guidelines on how to go about reading Srimad-Bhagavatam. So not only at home, or maybe it's a group of children in the temple, or it could be even introducing the same in a school, like one of the Matajis just asked. So in different scenarios, how to go about it systematically is what we are planning to discuss over this training course. And we'll address a whole lot of questions that I've gone through. We've read all these questions, and in consultation with Mataji, we can answer all these questions. So one last question by Vishnu Priya Mataji will take, and then we will conclude.
Yeah.
Yes, Vishnu.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. So regarding homeschooling, Mataji, what if the children feel bad about it, like because all their friends are going to school and enjoying the celebrations happening? I mean, not the celebrations as in some annual day or competitions happening there, and what if they feel like something like my parents are not sending to the school, some kind of thoughts like that? How do we overcome that, Mataji?
Mm-hmm. Well, it is a challenge. So that's why introducing homeschooling early in their life really helps, because they've already been so used to it. I know many children, if given the option of going to school, they would opt for homeschooling. So it's also the other way around, because they develop a taste for that type of life where they are immersed in Krishna conscious activities. So as well as, it's not like they don't do outside things, outside curriculums. Because in India, it was going to be quite difficult just to do a curriculum based on Srimad-Bhagavatam. They have compulsory subjects, right? So, but in spite of introducing outside curriculum, just a Krishna conscious lifestyle becomes very attractive to them over time. And they don't have that problem then of this need of going out there. Of course, when you have only one child, then it does become a little more challenging, right? But if you have two, then they keep themselves quite happy. And also, like I mentioned earlier, there's so many other ways to connect with the outside world through outreach programs, through temples, festivals, dramas, so many things. A child can really be busy, in being connected, right? One can connect the children to the outside world through so many of these Krishna conscious activities and outreach programs. So if a child is feeling that, then it's just a matter of if still this is the way you want to go, then it's just a matter of developing an attractive lifestyle at home where the child is feeling very comfortable. And it's your own conviction and your husband's conviction that really helps the child, develop that conviction himself, because that support has to be there from the parents. The conviction has to be there. And in this way, the child develops that conviction over time. So yeah, and doing an all-round exposure to everything really helps. If you were to keep your child strictly at home, like just sentence the child to a desk, obviously it becomes very unattractive. So the program that I had, and which many parents have, was a more dynamic program where the children were being exposed to things in the outside world. We just don't isolate them, we just give it to them in a way that makes it very attractive. Okay?
Thank you, Mataji. Also, during homeschooling, we also take the academics part of it. I mean, the physics, chemistry, and this one also, or is it purely Krishna conscious Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, Mataji?
Well, it depends on what is required in every country, and in India, I'm sure I've heard it's not possible just not to do the outside subjects because there's requirements and things. Not in homeschooling, but in terms of the way the system is set up in future, when they go to college and things. So you can introduce other subjects. There's no problem. But then you can make study of Srila Prabhupada's books, in particular Srimad-Bhagavatam, as an integral part of your curriculum. You see, on a daily basis. But there's no reason why you cannot introduce other subjects. My generally formula was that up to the age of like 12, there's no need to introduce outside subjects, or you can do it 10 if you feel more comfortable with that. Then there's actually no need to introduce other outside subjects, because by making them very good in these basic language skills, such as English and in basic skills like English and math, then one is giving them good foundation so that when they do have to do outside subjects, they will not have a problem. Because language becomes the basis for all humanities, and math becomes the basis for all science. So if you give them a good grounding in these two subjects, then they will be able to do any subject in their life later on. So this is what I did for myself. However, if you find it more safer or comfortable to introduce other subjects, outside subjects early on in their life, that's fine, okay?
Mataji, this Janardhan Prabhuji wanted to know about chastising children to reach their spiritual standards. So if you could quickly just mention about, address this question for Janardhan Prabhuji.
Well, it's a big topic, you know. Discipline is a big topic here, but a
Yeah.
very popular topic. So it's going to take, it may take a little longer, but just in very briefly, very briefly, um, Prabhupada's formula for discipline was to develop in our children the propensity to love Krishna. This was his formula for discipline, to develop in our children the propensity to love Krishna. So when the children develop their propensity to love Krishna, then disciplining them becomes easy. You see, because we were hearing earlier how learning about Krishna and his devotees gives us all those nice qualities that we want to see in our children, right? And because Krishna consciousness means, to develop these qualities, right? Krishna himself portrays these qualities. And when we associate with Krishna, we automatically inculcate those qualities. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that children will not act in an unruly way and they don't need discipline. Yes, once we do that part of giving them Krishna consciousness and giving them examples, then when there's a discipline problem, we have to take appropriate action. Because without discipline, without obedience, how can there be any learning, right? But we should not take it to an extent where the child feels discouraged or negative towards Krishna consciousness. It should be balanced, where the child can understand, that it's important and why it's important. Prabhupada gave actually different measures of discipline at different age groups, and he said between 10 and 15, there should be strict discipline from parents to children. And then after 15, they should be treated more like friends, right? So why early on? Because that's when we are actually training them, we can't afford them to make a serious mistake in their life, right? So we give them Krishna consciousness to help them to curb their misbehavior, basically. And as children become more and more spiritual, the lesser, fewer problems. But when there is a need, one has to take the right steps. For me, it was just simply, I would show my stern face and reprimand them, warn them, and that should be generally enough for a child to do what they need to do. Okay. But if sometimes it's necessary, one can take more serious measures. But generally, for a devotee child, this is enough, because their whole incentive is to please their parents. All children like to please their parents. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mataji. You have taken time out despite all this difference in our, time zones. You have, that's really kind of you that you accepted to come and spend so much time with us. And parents are actually flooding with so many more questions. And I really apologize that we cannot ask all those questions because Mataji has limited time. But like I said, that we will try to address these questions, especially of discipline. We are having a session on that as well in the course that we have planned. So we hope that all of you will benefit from this course, which is spread across 5 more sessions. This was the beginning session, the orientation one, and then we will talk about how to begin with setting up your objectives to teach Srimad-Bhagavatam, and then how to plan the structure of one session, so a little more systematically. And then different styles of delivering, especially relevant to teenagers. How can that be? So on and so forth. Planning with Mataji's blessings. We hope that many parents benefit this. Thank you so much, Arudha Mataji. I request Sudhir Gopal Prabhuji to say a few words, and also there's Sudhir Gopal Prabhuji. Yes.
We are very thankful to you, Mataji. So recently, last week only, Gopal Hari Prabhu had blessed and addressed our center. So, and it's nice that like now you are coming and addressing our congregation. yeah, I see also that you are everywhere, going to Delhi and tomorrow Bombay, and right now all over the world, right? So we are really, really fortunate, right, to have a mentor and a pioneer who has not only gone through it, but now really sharing from the heart, right, in a selfless way all over the world for so many parents, so many teachers. So we are really, really blessed to have you, Mataji. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity. And I really, really would deep full desire, please encourage all of you to join this program that Sudhir Gopal Prabhu and Madhumati are trying to initiate in your community. And you will definitely see a lot of reaping benefits from this. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So yes, we'll have pretty engaging sessions, right? Pretty interactive sessions, right? Like how to really inspire the kids, not really force the kids that, okay, this is the way that we have to study Bhagavatam. So definitely, right, like we have also Madhumati Mataji with decades of experience in Gurukul, and especially bringing up her two kids, right, who most of you have seen, like Prahlad and Dhruv. And apart from that, she has been conducting many programs as well. Like for the teenagers, for the kids, right? Definitely it will be really, really helpful from her as well to learn, right? Because she has really now decades of real experience of taking care of her kids and also so many students, right, over the last, right, so many years. And like along with her, so we'll have also a team of like Lakshmi Mataji and Shambhalavi Mataji to support her, right, in different activities, because now we're seeing that it's a big group. So we'll also see that how we can really make it more blissful learning, right, more right, inspiring in that way as well. And then that we can really take it to this program to right, give it to the children, or to the, like we can start our own, right, Srimad-Bhagavatam program for the teenager in different complexes or different in your respective areas. That's how we can really bring the strong foundation of our community. So when the children really take this principle of Srimad-Bhagavatam, as Mataji has wonderfully, right, shown with her example, and how Radhika Raman Prabhu and Gopal Hari Prabhu, they are inspiring now, right, now hundreds and thousands of congregation all over the world. So we would really like to have many more Radhika Raman Prabhu and Gopal Hari Prabhu.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Mataji. Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. So with this, we'll end this session, and looking forward to the next session next Saturday.